Hello! We have 3 stories today. We'll start with our first story asking if you've ever been so tired you start to dream of sleep. One fateful night, one woman gets desperate as her cat and dog start fighting like, well, cats and dogs. So she splits them up and locks them in. But she forgot about another piece in this puzzle that was eagerly cleaning away, and this is when things went off the rails, or should I say, into the rails. And then everywhere to create a scene of chaos, turning her dream into a nightmare. Story 1. Let me set the scene firstly. It was the morning after a big night. I had woken up with the simple plan to feed the animals and return to bed to nurse my wounds. Now, onto the FU. I drag myself out of bed and fed the cat and the dog. The cat scoffs her food and begins to try and staunch the dog. I decided I didn't have the energy to referee this scenario, and it would be easier to lock the cat inside and return to bed. Important info, the cat is an inside-outside cat, legal where I live. She eats and sleeps inside but roams and goes to the toilet outside. So I fall back asleep for around 2 hours when I am snapped awake by the smell of cat poop. And I'm not talking a hint of cat poop, I'm talking it is as if someone has painted my walls with it. The smell is accompanied by the subtle sounds of my Roomba doing its morning routine. As I lay trying to process the situation in my haze, doing the following calculations, cat poop plus Roomba equals disaster, once my brain processed the calculation above, the situation dawned on me. I ran down the hallway basically wading through a smell that you could literally cut with a knife. I burst into the kitchen to stumble upon what can only be described as a crime scene and possibly even a crime against humanity. The evidence suggests Roomba had picked up the cat turd and then proceeded to paint a perfect perimeter around my kitchen with it. It was on the skirting boards, cupboards, tiles, grout, and lastly, the Roomba was filled with it. My morning of nursing my wounds quickly fades as I am thrown in the trenches contemplating if burning the house is an easier option than dealing with the situation. After hours of cleaning the floor and kitchen, the poor Roomba had seen better days. I decided the open surgery was the only solution to try and save the Roomba, so I stripped it back to bare components. And to my surprise, it still works, although a slight hint of cat poop still remains and I can't look at it the same. In the comments, El Cabiza said, I think the F-up might be having a cat, but no litter box? OP replied, we have a litter box. She's a stray and refuses to use it and would rather go through the doggy door and outside. El Cabiza replied, then I stand corrected, but I think you mean refuses to use it and rather go on my kitchen floor in an attempt to destroy the evil vacuum robot. Good one. Is Andrew, though, said, Roomba plus kitty equals #nope. Oh my goodness, what a nightmare. I almost gagged reading this. I'm pretty sure having to deal with the fecal matter of another living thing is the only reason someone wouldn't get a pet. Or at least in my world, that's the only reason, since I love cuddling fur babies of all sorts. And I speak from experience as a rat mama. But alas, we all make sacrifices for our little fur bundles of joy. Our second story mixes kids with the strongest motivational force known to children worldwide, candy, and then unleashes them on a totally unsuspecting and innocent teacher. The feeding frenzy created by the promise of candy surprised everyone but none more than a teacher who had no idea what she did to deserve her rotten luck. Story 2. This was when I was in middle school. I used to have a really great history teacher that me and the kids used to love. He would hand out candy and just be there to talk if you needed him. Well, one spring, he advertised that he was going to be at the local fair to raise money for charity by participating in a dunk tank and asked us to show up. Cool. And the sweetener was that we'd get a piece of candy for each time we dunked him. Even better. So middle school me saved up 3 months of allowance and chore money for the big day and ended up with something like 40 tries worth of money by then. Come the big day, and there's predictably a huge line as every kid he's ever taught wants to support him and get candy. So long of a line that right as I was about to take my turn, his shift ends and he's replaced by another fellow teacher from another school district. Now here's where the TIFU comes in. One thing to know about me is that while I'm not athletic, I'm an idiot savant when it comes to carnival games and understand it's about accuracy, not showiness. So I was pretty confident I was going to get some hits in. Little did I know that my childlike brain would get into some weird rhythm and basically make something like 35 of the 40 attempts I had on the poor teacher. I basically dunked her as soon as she got back onto the platform for something like 15 minutes straight. Oh. Looking back, it was pretty clear someone should have stepped in with a mercy rule, but my childlike brain knew candy was on the line, so I just kept going and going and going. No doubt, probably making this lady wonder if I was some former student that had it out for her. In the comments, Dissecting AAA said, "I think the funniest part is picturing her trying to remember you from class and failing to do so." Getting Good replied, "Who is the freaking Splash?" Helm Spicy said, "I'm just picturing this confused teacher barely getting back onto the platform over and over and over again, only to have it immediately collapse, repeatedly dunking them before they can even get settled long enough to see who is doing this to them and why. For the love of God, why?" Maybe I'm cruel, but this is the funniest thing I've read all week. El Mostaza shared, "A vice principal who was constantly making my life miserable had a booth at a school charity event where you could pay to push pies into her face. Pies were just foil liners filled with whipped cream. I dropped enough money that I had the booth to myself for like 25 minutes solid. It was the highlight of my year. Surprisingly, her treatment of me in the following semesters did not improve." No kidding. "That's right. Let's sweeten the pot for these kids by offering them candy when they dunk us in water," said no teacher ever. "This isn't OP's TIFU, it's the teachers that set up this carnival. It should be dunk or candy, not both. What kid wouldn't double down to dunk teachers and win candy?" And I have to say, this break in shift seems oddly convenient for the teacher that encouraged all the kids to show up. Our third story might have you rolling with laughter as one stick-in-the-mud principal gets every possible fear confirmed about having kids read the announcements when they hand the microphone over to one student who's an expert in immaturity. But you know what doesn't mix with rolling and mud? Balls. Yep, that's gonna be a problem. Oh, I know. Let's make an announcement. Story 3. So, my 12-year-old son, who is very shy, has been coming out of his shell, trying new things, putting himself out there in ways he never would have a few years ago, participating in choir and plays, joining teams. His school recently got a new principal who is somewhat of a buzzkill. She fenced off a hill that kids used to sled down during the winter. She hired more lunch and hallway monitors to supervise kids, and she started reading the school announcements herself. The previous principal would have staff and students read the announcements that were relevant to them. If the announcement pertained to the basketball or the chess team, someone from the basketball or chess team had to come down to the office and read it. Here's where the TIFU starts. I work with the school board in a professional capacity, and last Friday, during a meeting with senior leadership and principals, I ran into my son's new principal. I lamented the change and suggested that kids enjoyed reading the announcements. Her complaint was that there would always be 10 kids in the office taking turns, and she just wanted it to be streamlined. But she came up with the idea of having one kid each week who would read all of the announcements. My son would be the first. He was thrilled. Monday and Tuesday announcements go off without a hitch. Wednesday, however, threw him a curveball. The principal decided that on tarmac-only days, that is when the grass was wet and the fields muddy, kids would not be allowed to play with any balls. We know exactly where this is headed. The principal dutifully wrote up an announcement with the words, "No balls," in bold. My son read the announcement as written, adding emphasis where she did. He did, however, improvise and name-dropped his friends and teachers. Mrs. Smith would like to announce that on tarmac-only days, students are not to play with balls at recess. There will be no balls allowed on tarmac-only days. That's disappointing. I don't know what she has against balls, but there will be no balls played with There will be no balls played with today. Mrs. Smith doesn't want us playing with balls. I know Jackson Cooper, his best friend, loves playing with balls. He's not picky. He'll play with any balls. Mr. Jones, the gym teacher, lets us play with balls every day. We also have lots of fun, and then she turned off the mic. He was suspended and sent home. I have already had a conversation with the superintendent, and he's going to overrule the suspension. My son's teacher, a friend of mine from way back, said it was the funniest thing he's ever heard because it was completely deadpan. In the comments, Spirited Narwhal said, "That's pretty ballsy of her to suspend your son when she was the one who created the stupid no balls rule." Azure Skyfall said, "Okay, this is hilarious, but did he know?" At 12, I would say he probably did, but I work with middle schoolers and most of them cannot keep a straight face if they make a joke like that in person. To be so deadpan through multiple versions of the joke makes me think he is just that innocent. OP replied, "He knew. He just has a good poker face." And we all know he was the hero of his school, straight through to graduation. Kids never forget a moment like this. This is on the same level as the newt flying at Miss Trunchbull. Epic moment that will forever go down in history. I think that a sense of humor should be a requirement for any individual that is in leadership in the school system, because that gap gets filled with something not so fun. Like no playing with balls rules. No balls. Can't get over it. And that's it for today. Until next time, shine bright, Starlight. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.